Catus. Maximus here, this time with a review of the Plews American-made clutch alignment tool set. Actually, I had done a review a while back of this Calvan American-made clutch alignment tool set, and actually saw that Napa actually still sells these types of sets right on the shelf. But then I ran into a Plews set. I don't think I've reviewed any Plews tools. I've reviewed Mayhew, but I totally forgot about this brand. This is advertised as working with both fractional and metric, and how they achieve that is they have these nose pieces. These fit in the spindle bearing, or the pilot bearing that's in the end of the crankshaft. That's what holds the end of the input shaft, the power shaft of the transmission. The splines go through the clutch, and then the tip of it's supported to keep it really straight and aligned in the back of the crankshaft. And there's a pilot bearing, and so that's what all these adapters are for. Is that you would take one of these adapters, say the small one here, screw it onto the end of the handle. You'd find the right one, screw it onto the end of the handle, and so they'd have one side that's fractional and another side that's the closest metric size. And so that's why some of these have really shallow steps, and of course others have very steep steps. What I do like is they come with just a little sharp nose piece just for certain situations. It does use an O-ring. It's missing from this one, but an O-ring just to kind of sit on the threads, but it's not actually threaded. You put the clutch on, you put the pressure plate on, and you put it on lightly so you can still scooch the clutch around to get it centered. One of the biggest challenges with doing clutches on manual transmissions is getting that darn clutch disc centered when you torque the bolts around the pressure plate. Otherwise, if it's not centered, you're not getting the transmission on, and it's always a nightmare because you're battling and you just cannot get that transmission to either just go into the splines in the first place on the clutch, or if you are, you just can't get the darn transmission close enough. It's either too low or too high or off to the side for you to get any of the bolt holes to line up. And of course, you're wrestling with the transmission. You got to pull it back off and deal with the clutch again. So these tools can save a huge amount of frustration. Anyway, you'd lightly bolt on the pressure plate so you can still scooch the clutch around. You put this through, and then this sits on inside the end of the pilot bearing. And then you have this tapered cone. It actually has two tapers. Mainly you'd use this forward taper, but I kind of like that it has both sides. It slides over the rod. It's actually a pretty nice tight fit. And then this is what you would push into the clutch disc, and you'd use this handle to work it around until you get this just as far down as it will go, getting that clutch disc just totally centered in the pressure plate. And then once you have this in there and you've got it centered, then you tighten the bolts around the pressure plate. And so that's the same way that this Calvan would work, although I should mention that the Calvan does have some pretty nice knurling on their set. And they do have some nice knurling on the back of the rod. So there's some nicer touches, I should say, fit and finish on the Calvan set. It's just not as complete a set as this Plews. And I was looking online, and actually I was able to find a few sets of these Plews still hanging around. So you can still get these. And I just asked myself the same question, and that question would be, if I like this, get all this stuff out of here. These vinyl bags are always a little bit annoying that they include with the tools. Anyway, I just wanted to see if this, oh indeed, so there's a standard there with the diameter of this rod. So the Calvan slide tool, and this is indeed a Calvan, will work on the Plews set. So that's actually kind of nice. So if I prefer the heavier duty knurling on the Calvan, I can use it with the Plews set. And then of course, vice versa, I would be able to use the Plews with the Calvan rod. So it's kind of nice to see that they do have interchangeability. There is standards with these clutch alignment tools. That's actually really positive. And we can actually see that the Calvan, the taper is actually, it's kind of interesting. I think that the overall diameter of this Calvan is just a little bit smaller because this taper is just a little bit longer and shallower, or excuse me, is a little bit shallower, even though it's not quite as long as on the Plews set. If we do compare, since one of the last things to compare, there's that knurling. I do like that feature on this Calvan rod, and we can also see that the Calvan rod is a little bit longer, giving you a little bit more leverage. But then again, the threads are not cut quite as nice on the Plews. So there's some trade-offs with both sets of these tools. But the Plews is more complete primarily because it comes with a really small and a pointed bit. These two parts here, which the Calvan it didn't come with. So anyway, one thing I will also mention about the Plews is there's just no stamping anywhere. You have no, I would have had no idea this was a Plews, and if it didn't come in their original packaging, where at least, you know, Calvan, at least it lets you know that it was a Calvan. Never really understood that with some manufacturers, because if somebody finds some tools, they may like them, and if you don't have your name stamped on them, they won't be able to know about you and buy more of your products. And ignore the rest of this stuff. This is for another video. Good old Makita DA 4511, Makita's version of a whole hog. Anyway, that was my review of the Plews Universal Clutch Pilot Tool Set. And overall, I like it. But I also like aspects of the Calvan. And it's what makes me kind of glad to collect tools, is because I'm able to get these sets, see the differences, and in this situation, really the best set that I have is a combination of both of these. Anyway, I'll go and leave it off there. I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing and leaving comments. I'm going to definitely reiterate that. I really do appreciate the comments and the interaction on the channel, and definitely encourage it. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.